Good day. Welcome to Agenda. Sitting in for Cito Beltran, I'm Ed Linggao. We are one news, all sides, all the time. For today's starter quote, it's hard to hear God's voice when you've already decided what you want him to say. And now let's take a look at the front page of the Philippine Star. A new Philippines is here. President Bongbong Marcos declared in his second State of the Nation address on Monday, as he made familiar calls for unity and promises of inclusive growth. We discuss this later on the program with our guests. Also, during his SONA, President Marcos also called on lawmakers to ensure that members of the uniformed services would not be affected by the reforms in their pension system. In other news, with the threat of Typhoon Egay, Pag-asa placed several areas in Luzon and the Visayas under wind signal number 2 on Monday. Signal number 1 was raised in Metro Manila and other provinces as well. And the National Grid Corporation of the Philippines, or NGCP, vows to accelerate the completion of major transmission projects, which would include the Mindanao-Visayas interconnection and the Cebu-Negros Panay project. President Bongbong Marcos had his second State of the Nation address yesterday. Let's further analyze his report with our guests for today. But before that, let's watch this.
In his second State of the Nation address yesterday, touched on the topics of economy, environment, and education, among others. But critics pointed out some important issues that were missing in his 1 hour and 10-minute speech. Marcos insisted that our independent foreign policy is working.
Our independent foreign policy, a friend to all and enemy of none, has proven effective. We have formed strategic alliances with our traditional and newfound partners in the international community.
However, he kept his lips sealed on our claim over the West Philippine Sea. The president also did not bring up his campaign promise of bringing down the price of rice to 20 pesos per kilo. Aside from this, progressive groups slammed the president for not discussing human rights issues. Let's discuss the president's SONA further on today's agenda.
Edna Co is a professor at the University of the Philippines National College of Public Administration and Governance. She was the college's former dean from 2010 to 2013. Co is also the director of the UP Diliman Extension Program in Pampanga.
And good morning to Professor Edna Co, former Dean of UP NCPAG. Ma'am, magandang umaga and thank you for joining us. Oh, ma'am, nakamute pa po.
Thank you for having me, Ed. Thank you,
Thank you, ma'am.
Good morning. Yes.
Always a pleasure, ma'am. Ma'am, well, let's start off with the most basic of all questions. Any surprises dun sa SONA ng Pangulo, or were you surprised that you weren't surprised?
I wasn't really surprised that it was a regular fare. I mean, the layout of the speech of the vision for running the Philippines in the coming years, I think these are basic, fundamental, and nothing exceptional. But I think he gave thoughts on this before putting things together in his speech.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Pero ma'am, meron siyang mga binitawang salita that did raise, at least for some people, did also raise some eyebrows. For example, let me look for it again. Here, for example, in the early part of his speech, for example, sabi niya, we proved that we can bring down the price of rice, sugar, and meat, and a few other items. I'm not exactly sure that the bringing down of the for example, the price of rice was that significant for him to bring it up.
Well, actually, Ed, I think the public, the listeners to that particular statement should not assume that in a click of a finger, the price of sugar, the price of rice will really come down. Of course, that is his dream, his vision during his term. Pero kasi iba yung usapin na, has it been done in the first year? Has it been done on the second year? It's something else aside from during his term, which is 6 years, 5 years na lang natitira. Kaya ba niya itong gawin? I think that remains as a promise and it's a work in progress. So sa akin, ganun ko tinitingnan yung ganitong klaseng statement ng Pangulo.
Yes, well, I did bring it up only because he used the past tense already. Now we've proven that we can bring it down. Although he also didn't mention anymore yung his earlier, you might call it a campaign promise to bring it down by to as much as 20 pesos na lang. Notably, hindi po binanggit yun. You just give a general statement na ibaba na yung presyo.
Kasi Ed, iba yung pangako sa panahon ng kampanya na kayang ito yung gagawin ng isang leader. Pero pag nakaupo na siya, lalo na siya yung at the same time nagsiserve na Secretary ng Agriculture.
Yes.
Siguro nagulat din siya, no? And he probably has seen and is starting to discover, if not, he has not yet fully discovered, yung mga complexity ng Department of Agriculture. In fact, yun yung opening salvo ng malaking problema niya. Andyan kaagad yung, hinarap niya kaagad yung problema ng meron palang nagmo-monopolize, may importation, merong mga, may ilang problems. And I think those are the obstacles. These have been the obstacles that a leader would have to deal with, and in a gracious way, strongly though, kung paano niya madideliver yung final result, which is pababain ang presyo ng bigas para sa mamamayan. But as I said, mature leadership would tell us, hindi ganong kadali yung pagde-deliver ng isang pangako. Kailangan meron kang gawin para harapin yung obstacles na nakikita mo. And he saw that, being himself the Secretary of the Department of Agriculture.
Ma'am, at the same time, the president also raised an issue that he first brought up mga 2 months ago, quite a controversial issue, I might say, yung military and uniform personnel pension system reform. It's quite a controversial and sensitive issue, especially as far as the military and police are concerned. And a lot of past administrations have refused to touch it with a 10-foot pole. Well, he to his credit, he brought it up yesterday in his SONA. Pero did he make a strong enough push as you would have expected for Congress to finally address this issue?
I think, Ed, paligay ko nag-iingat ang Pangulo. Maingat niyang ina-assemble yung kanyang line of thinking at saka yung kanyang mensahe, recognizing that the military, for any president, for any leader, is very crucial, no? It can make or unmake a leadership. Yeah. Napaka-critical nito eh. And yet, he recognizes the value and importance of a military block behind a leader like a president. Kinikilala niya ito, kaya kamukha ng ibang reforma na binanggit kaugnay ng government right-sizing, the bureaucracy, yung reforms na kailangang gawin. Bahagi ng reform, yung pag-review sa pension, ay wala naman siyang pinangakong napakadetalyado, pero review of the pension is something which is rightfully, I think, a responsibility of no less than the president. At ganun din, habang ina-address niya ito, hinaharap din niya yung mga maraming usapin na kinakaharap ng military. Kagaya ng they are going to be challenged in the coming days on an enormous responsibility to protect the West Philippine Sea, to protect our borders. Ang malaking bahagi nito magre-rely talaga sa ating yung collective forces, no? Navy, Coast Guards, Coast Guard is civilian, but I think the armed forces generally, no, Air Force, all of this. So palagay ko napakabalansyado ng position na reforming the pension, but at the same time alam niya kasi na kailangan niya yung support ng military on very vital Philippine, national and global issues, regional issues, in fact.
Yes, ma'am. Kaya ma'am, to his credit, Well, talaga to his credit, he did bring it up, and he is making good on his earlier statements to reform the pension system, at least in his SONA. Of course, also notably dun sa SONA niya sa pension system, very, very careful nga. Ang sabi nga ninyo, efforts underway to make it fully functional and financially sustainable. At the same time, may assurance military that they're finding a way to guarantee, and I put this in quotes, no effects are felt by those in the uniformed services. So talagang meron siyang an effort to placate any grumblings or ill feelings within the military. But it is a big gamble. Tama nga po kayo. It is a big gamble, especially now that he needs the military all the more.
Yes, I agree.
Ma'am, you already mentioned the West Philippine Sea, so I'd like to head in that direction muna. Did he pay enough attention to the issues in the West Philippine Sea as much as you would have wanted?
Actually, I can imagine that the president is feeling like he's walking on eggshell. Parang ang dami niyang titimbangin dahil ito yung the dynamics between China and the United States has to be considered, but also tayo yung nasa gitna, no? Itong dalawang higante na nag-uumpugan kaugnay ng West Philippine Sea. Alam natin na may interest ang US sa Pacific in terms of the security, at babantayan niya ito like a giant guard. Subalit dahil dito, may impact siguro ito sa ating bansa. On the other hand, China is really a power in the region, not only in the region, in fact, globally also. And yun na nga, napakahirap ng posisyon ng Pilipinas, at palagay ko ang ginagawa ng Pangulo, even in the diplomatic gestures that he has shown, ay binabalanse niya. Gusto niyang kausapin ang China, subalit gusto rin niyang mahusay na makipag-ugnayan sa US. The advantage though of this current leadership is that there is a sense of balancing, and compared to the previous administration, talagang outrightly outside the Colombo ang US, at humatak ng malapit sa atin ang China. I think a diplomat leader has to balance the relationship for the sake of the country. Ayaw nating masubo sa gera, pero may mga stakes din tayo na dapat protektahan sa West Philippine Sea.
And a reiteration of what he also said last year, friend to all, enemy to none, and saying that that position has proven effective in the last year. From your perspective, ma'am, was it as effective as it should have been? Making sure all friendships are upheld, but at the same time pushing back when needed. Actually,
I do not want to make a very conclusive statement on that. It remains to be seen, no, in the coming days kung paano puposisyon ang ating bansa, ang administrasyon. But I think he has sent the right initial message. We want to hold hands with many other countries who can help us economically through investments. Kaya sabi ko nga nung isang araw, parang salesman ang Pangulo na, come on, he's trying to make a marketing message for other countries to invest. Dahil kailangan natin yung investment, subalit on the other hand, ayaw natin na masasagasaan tayo dahil nasa pagmamay-ari naman natin by virtue of the recognition of the United Nations yung assets ng West Philippine Sea. So I think he started it correctly by liaisoning with other countries, and at the same time may duality yung purpose, no? To say we are not creating enemies on anyone, and in fact we want to explore further collaboration which will be economically beneficial for the country.
Ma'am, nabanggit rin niyo yung pagka-salesman ng Pangulo. So let me head in that direction then. The President as well defended his many foreign trips. I counted at least 13 Of course, 2 of them were repeat trips Pero sumatotal bali 13 in the last year, 13 foreign trips. So many missions abroad, and his claim that these missions abroad yielded $71 billion, but in investment pledges, not necessarily investments in actuality, but pledges. Now having seen how that turned out nung panahon ni Pangulong Duterte, we had I think 23 billion in pledges from China, of which only 2 billion materialized. How do you see this? I mean, yeah, of course, part of his job is pushing the Philippines, but are we getting a good return in our expenses?
Actually, I think any leadership should pursue the attempt to grow investments, to grow contributions from other countries. Whether this turn out to be real or not, merong karanasan din tayo na yung sa China medyo mabagal yung creating the message into a reality. Medyo mahirap yan. Pero at least for the other countries as well, it will be good to, invite and see what are the potentials and the possibility of investment. Hindi naman siya in a snap of a finger, investments are in. But at least there are
That's
efforts. There are efforts to pursue that and to locate ourselves as a global player. And I think the ADB has also recognized that there are some positive signs on where we are at the moment in terms of the direction of reaching out, in terms of really some sort of making our presence felt within the region. And I hope that prediction of the Asian Development Bank really comes to a reality.
Ma'am, there was also mention by the president of the need to pass laws on common procurement and auditing. He did mention these in passing, pero hindi siya nagdetalye. I was wondering if we're aware as to what kind of revisions or amendments he wants in for example, the procurement law. Are we looking at liberalizing or loosening regulations on procurement to make purchases easier and faster? If it is, what are the dangers of that resulting in the possibility of abuse?
Actually, Ed, I'm coming from a state university, which is really complying with and dealing with the procurement and the bidding processes of the public sector.
Yes,
and I would say this, I am sorry with regard to my statement, but I'm saying that there are rules and procedures which are 19th century governance and does not apply anymore into our current situation. Ang malaking conservatism, ang malaking assumption lagi na magkakaroon ng corruption, ng pagdududa, ito yung isa sa mga reason kung bakit stalled, nakaka-hold ng innovation, ng bagong paraan ng even the sciences, no? Our science community has been largely affected by bago ka makaprocure ng tamang technology, outdated na yung technology mo, and you're now ready to put before the table a new set of proposal for procurement. In other words, government, the public sector has to really revisit the rules, the procedures, at dapat ito ay positive and affirmative to say how can we be accountable to huge sum of money, show us the outcome and the byproduct. But to be able to assure accountability does not mean very traditional and conservative in putting some investments into our technology, into our science. Napaka-disheartening nito sa science community, no? Outdated technology, outdated. And I am speaking, let's say, my viewpoint as a UP professor, nakaka-dishearten ito sa those who have the talent, those who have the innovations, those who have the scientific mind, pero caught in between ka or stopped by the conservatism of our public rules. I think it's about time, and I'm sure that the president is aware of this. So, the lieutenants, those on the ground, and we beg the auditing and the finance persons in the government, kailangan talagang siguro be more results-oriented rather than lagyan ng bakod ang ating mga plano.
Rather than process-oriented.
Yes.
Ma'am, teka, I'd like to drill a bit into that kasi I think that's fascinating and interesting at the same time, and I think people need to know more about that. Yung sabi niyo, there are rules that are so 19th century that they're holding us back. Could you give us a little bit of detail on that? Ano yung mga yan na parang kailangan talaga nating baguhin?
Actually, yung delay sa decision, those who approve the budget, for example, yung mga nasa intermediate level, nasa top level, kahit yung nasa top, okay, pero it's the intermediate level of our public sector that scrutinizes the details. I think dapat maunawaan bakit ganito ang character ng proposal, bakit ganito ang technology na kailangang ang hinihingi, no, ng let's say our state universities and colleges, kasi ito na ang state of the way things we're doing should really be more similar to how other countries have moved forward. So, yung technology na i-acquire, yung ating procurement, bakit magdi-develop tayo ng technology hub na talagang makakatulong sa ating productivity, sa ating discovery, putting forward the sciences. Ito medyo, ano to, no, yung kailangan mailagay ng nasa intermediate level ng approving authority, yung rationale ng mga innovators natin. At palagay ko, hindi basta ibinababa yung rules. Of course, the Congress has a big role into this. Yung pagbabago, pagsasagawa ng reforma sa usapin ng finances, accounting, and even the auditing. But I'm not saying let's be so unconventional na wala tayong accountability. So I think as public administration person, I would say, andyan ang accountability at mananatili. Subalit hindi ito maging hadlang dapat sa innovation at sa progress natin.
Still, the safeguards should be in place. Ma'am, maraming salamat po. Former Dean Edna Co ng UP NCPAG. Ma'am, thank you for taking the time to join us this morning. Ingat
My
po.
pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Professor Edna Co. Agenda will return. Keep it here in One News, all sides, all the time.
Economic achievements took the limelight in President Bongbong Marcos' second State of the Nation address. In his speech, Marcos admitted that inflation has been the biggest problem encountered in the past year, but the government is now moving to stabilize prices of critical commodities. The president also boasted that the Philippine economy is one of the fastest growing economies in the world. Aside from the Maharlika Investment Fund, which was recently signed into law, Marcos also mentioned one area where the funds will be used for.
For strategic financing, some of the nation's high-priority projects can now look to the newly established Maharlika Investment Fund without the added debt burden. The funds shall be used to make high-impact and profitable investments, such as the Build Better More program. The gains from the fund shall be reinvested into the country's economic well-being.
Is the country on track for a better and brighter economy? Let's discuss that on today's agenda.
A veteran economist, Calixto Chikiamco is a member of the board of the Institute for Development and Econometric Analysis. Chikiamco also currently serves as the president of the Foundation for Economic Freedom. He holds an economics degree from De La Salle and a master's degree in media administration from Syracuse University.
And good morning. Welcome back to Agenda. We continue today's post talk with economist Calixto Chikiamco of from the board of the Institute for Development and Economic Analysis, or IDEA. Magandang umaga, sir, and thank you for joining us.
Magandang umaga, Ed. Thank you for having me.
Always a pleasure, sir. Sir, anyway, yung mga binitawan kahapon ng Pangulo, as far as the numbers are concerned, it does appear that things are looking up. But let me drill down to some of the details that he also brought up yesterday and ask you if you agree with some of the things he said. For example, ang sabi niya, although mukhang na-temper naman ang inflation, pero ang sabi niya kahapon we've proven that we can bring down the price of rice and sugar and meat and several other products. No, I do understand na na-temper nga yung inflation, pero significant ba yung pagbaba ng presyo, for example, ng rice?
Well, I think ang rice has not really gone up that much because of the rice tariffication law, no? Medyo stabilized nga. However, I think here in the future, there might be a problem because I think India will stop exporting rice.
Exporting.
Yun, no? But I think inflation really was brought down by global developments, you know, and primarily the drop in oil prices, no, and the prices of some commodities. So we are reaping the benefits of that. But of course, I think in the case of sugar, prices are still a bit higher than it was before, maybe last year when it was around, I think, 50 pesos per kilo. Now it's still 100. So, hindi pa bumaba ng ganoon, ano? So, yan ang, I think they will still face the problem of food inflation in the coming months, no? And I have not seen a really, solid plan to address that problem.
It's good that you mentioned that, sir. Kasi ingay, the way the president presented the numbers yesterday, it looked like we've done quite a bit in addressing those numbers. Pero sir, going back to that, for example, nga sugar, parang ang tagal nang natin naririnig na bababa rin yan. And we've seen a lot of missteps in last year in terms, for example, of yung timing ng mga importations, yung decision-making sa asukal. And of course, you also had the issue of rice na yung naipangako dati na 20 pesos, pero 25 nasa kadiwa pa, na subsidized, tapos buffer stock pa natin. So yes, the numbers in general may look better than last year, pero parang are we that confident that the government has done enough to temper inflation?
Well, I think if you're talking about food inflation, I think the only solution really is food liberalization, no? And we have not undertaken that. No, there's still a lot of quantitative restrictions on sugar, onions, corn, etc. Quantitative restrictions and high tariffs. No, for as long as that policy remains in place, we're going to be very vulnerable to food shortages and spikes in food. So I think the problem is that the president has undertaken we're not enemies of anyone, and we are friends to everyone.
Friends of everyone.
So it's a very cautious approach. It will not engender any controversy, but I think we need to take that important step of liberalizing food imports because we are not producing enough. In our the structure of our agriculture is such that productivity remains low, and until we have bigger and better managed farms, that will be the situation for some time.
Sir, what do you think of what the president said in terms of government pushing more support to agriculture, specifically to the farmers? Among them, yung condonation ng bad loans sa agrarian reform, yung technical and financial assistance to the farmers in an effort to boost productivity. Of course, they all sound good. They all sound good on paper, but are they the solution, and are they what we need and what we want to address the issue of food inflation?
Well, the debt condonation law, or the new agrarian reform emancipation,
Yes, sir.
a significant but not for the reasons they're citing. No, it's not the matter of just forgiving the debt of the farmers. No, because our biggest problem in agriculture is really land fragmentation. The
Yes, sir.
average land size is only about 1 hectare or less. No, for as long as lands are fragmented, you will never be able to apply capital, science, technology to agriculture. No, so yun ang I think the problem of having land fragmentation. So the new agrarian reform emancipation will enable some form of land consolidation through leasing. Because 93% of all agrarian reform condoned lands are now past 10 years, and therefore the farmers can now
Can sell them.
eat their land. So hopefully the government actually should promote agri-economic zones and bigger farms. Not through cooperatives, because cooperatives have proven not to be successful here. So what we need are really bigger farms by let's say by leasing.
Sir, I'm sorry. I think that's interesting. I'm hoping that you can explain that further. Of course, kanina you were talking about economies of scale. Fragmented lands generating less productivity for more expenses kasi nga hati-hati sila. But at the same time, sabi nga ninyo, cooperatives which have been touted for the longest time by so many administrations are not working, and there should be an alternative to that. Could you explain that further? What was wrong with the issue of cooperatives po, and what is the alternative which you say is leasing?
Well, because there's still plenty of restrictions in place. So cooperatives, if there are disagreements, it becomes political. It's not a matter of I buy you out or you buy me out. You can't do that under our present laws because of the land retention limits. No, so it becomes political. Our cooperatives have become political. Bakbakan doon sa inside the cooperatives, rather than if there is disagreement, then one person should be allowed to consolidate the lands rather than having to live with so many. And the other problem, of course, cooperatives is that we have to separate management from ownership, because not all owners are good managers. In running an agribusiness requires business sense. And not everybody is. Let's face the facts. The average age of farmers is about 55 years old. The average educational attainment of our farmers is grade 5. No? So, and the average land size is 1 hectare or less. How can you modernize the agricultural sector with that kind of structure? No matter how much money you throw at the agricultural budget, you will not be able to get increased output unless you change the structure of agriculture.
That's very interesting, sir. I say that kasi for the longest time, so many administrations have been pushing, for example, cooperatives. All this time, it's not working.
Magandang pakinggan eh. Magandang pakinggan, it is going to be inclusive, etc. But it does not work. The proof of that is that our agriculture sector has have been a very very poor has given a very poor performance. And our agriculture productivity has lagged behind of other Asian countries. So that's proof that these measures that they're saying is not working.
Sir, cambio ko, sir. Maharlika. Binanggit, of course, ang Pangulong Maharlika. Everybody knew that was coming. Parang everything Congress tried to do in the last few months were all directed at passing Maharlika bill just in time for the SONA. And so finally, the President proudly talks about Maharlika, saying that, it's going to be, we're going to have high impact, profitable investments and gains from the fund to be reinvested back into the Philippines. Did he make a convincing push for Maharlika to the public, not anymore to Congress, but to the public and to potential investors?
Well, ang maganda ron, i-clarify niya ano talaga yung Maharlika kasi yun ang sinasabi nila, sovereign wealth fund.
Yes,
Pero
sir.
It turns out to be a development fund.
Development fund.
Kasi sabi niya, it will go into infrastructure. So, at least clarify kasi noon, medyo hindi mo alam kung ano talaga yung Maharlika. Saka sabi nila, sovereign wealth fund. That means it will invest in equities abroad, di ba?
Yes, sir.
Ang ibig sabihin ng... pero ngayon, sinasabi niya, is going to be for infrastructure. So, at least, malinaw na ang purpose at mission ng Maharlika Investment Fund. Ang isa pa, ang sinasabi niya, there will be international recognized economic managers, no? Well, ang problema noon is that they're all going to be appointees also. And
Yes, sir.
It would have been better, I think, if he had mentioned that they will seek a partner, let's say an international financial institution or a multilateral as a partner, so that will take care of the governance aspects of the Maharlika Investment Fund. So it will really assure that it will not be political, hindi ba? I mean, that's what I would have wanted to hear from him. But he's saying that they'll just get international recognized managers. The problem is there could be, of course, what you call adverse selection. You know, kasi because of the way it is structured with a lot of criminal penalties and high expectations that it will have, it has to earn at least 8 or to 10% because of the return, right? So we have to see whether there are really international recognized managers who will accept those positions.
Pero sir, the fact that the fact na parang it was it was such a confusing and confused bill from the very start, from November last year until it was finally passed a couple of weeks ago. Parang the nature of the bill, the nature of the fund has been so confusing and so convoluted. It has changed significantly from the initial bill in Congress. Does that inspire any confidence that the legislators and the government actually knew what it wanted, actually knew what they wanted to come out with?
They didn't know what they wanted, and they didn't really think about the safeguards until, of course, at least fortunately, the Senate listened to some of the opposition and removed a lot of the objectionable provisions in the law, like, for example, the guarantees to be given to the GFIs, the perpetual funding from the BSP to the fund, those were removed. So at least to that extent, the most objectionable provisions have been removed.
Pero sir, I asked that question kasi if Congress itself was so and Malacanang were so unsure as to what exactly they wanted, then were they really aiming for something specific, or was it simply aiming for something specifically political in nature? I mean, one versus the other, aiming for an actual and concrete fund versus aiming for the idea of something that you can call Maharlika.
Well, in the end, it became political, so that's the sum total. Because actually, if you really think about it, when he says that it will go into infrastructure projects, there's no additionality because existing institutions can do the same thing. DBP, Land Bank, and Finance, and National Development Corporation can also identify all those projects, right? I mean, That's what the NDC was for. So there was no additionality to the Maharlika Investment Fund. But, you know, it's in a way, it's a political project. No, it's named Maharlika. So we're there. So the way forward is really to ensure that good governance is really adhered to, and that there must be strict rules about its investment.
Ang sabi nga po ng Pangulo kahapon financial considerations only without political influence as far as Maharlika is concerned.
Yeah, but at the same time, can I point out
Yes, sir.
that they have to there must not there be no conflict in objectives. Will it be maximization of returns? Because if you are, for example, have a toll road, and if you want the highest possible toll rate, right? But that in conflict with the political aspects of
Yes, sir.
making sure that toll users, the commuters, will really get a low
Consumers.
rate. So they'll find themselves in these kinds of sticky situations.
Nako, paano ngayon, sir?
Well, I don't know how they will tread that. How they will tread that, no? They'll be caught between a rock and a hard place.
Kasi diba, it's always a balancing act for government, diba? You're looking at whether it's agriculture, where you look at you try to find a balance between farmers and consumers and the middlemen. In this particular case, diba, consumers versus making a profit to grow the Maharlika Fund.
That's right.
That's interesting.
They're under pressure to generate at least 8 or to 10% returns. Which is quite a hurdle in these times of uncertainty.
Sir, sorry, pabol na lang, sir. Before I let you go, I want to ask you about the MUP, the Military Uniform Personnel Pension System. Quite a controversial measure the president is pushing. Sabi nga na marami, it's about time that we talk about it because everybody's been avoiding it. And now finally, it's out of the table. It's out for Congress to consider. Do you think that the president pushed it enough with Congress, yung MUP? I know he did, but was it enough to get Congress moving?
Well, it's too general. But in fact, the thing is, he said he will guarantee that there will be no what's that?
Yes, sir. Sir, sabi niya, sir, no effects. To guarantee no effects are felt.
No effects. He will guarantee no effects. So it will be painless. Is it possible that it will be painless? I don't know what is the solution that they have that it will be painless to the existing armed forces personnel. Because to sustain that, there has to be some contributions, right? So there will be some pain from the status quo.
Sir, wala kayong wala bang possible formula for everybody happy, nobody nobody pays the bill?
Frankly, I don't know. I haven't studied it enough, but if you're going to make some changes to make it sustainable, I would surmise that there will be at least some pain, some form of contribution from the armed forces personnel to their pension fund.
Okay, sir, we're out of time. It was a wonderful discussion with you. Talked about so many things in what, just 20-25 minutes. Maraming salamat po, economist Calixto Chikiamco. Thank you, sir, for joining us this morning. Ingat po.
All right, thank you. All right, bye-bye.
We will just go into break, so please do stay with us.
Attorney Terry Ridon is the convener of the local think tank InfraWatch PH. Before this, he was the chairperson and CEO of Presidential Commission for the Urban Poor from 2016 to 2017. He also served as a congressman representing the Kabataan Party list.
And of course, joining us this morning, former congressman and now convener of InfraWatch PH, Attorney Terry Ridon. Sir, magandang umaga and thank you for joining us this morning.
Ay, magandang umaga, Ed. Maraming salamat sa pag-imbita.
Yes, sir. I wanted to ask you a very general question first, pero diretso tayo sa in one particular issue that was brought up yesterday. Sabi ng Pangulo, gusto niya ng amendments dun sa procurement law at dun sa government auditing system. You are convener of InfraWatch. I'm wondering kung anong nakikita mong hinahanap ng Pangulong pagbabago doon sa procurement at doon sa auditing. Ano yun, pagluluwag?
Well, alam po ninyo, dun sa procurement, talagang malaki po yung problema ho natin dyan. Kasi syempre, dyan ho talaga nakatago minsan yung mga pangloloko doon sa mga proyekto ng gobyerno, no? So, syempre, ang gusto natin makita dyan, magpatuloy po yung transparency and accountability, no? Nung panahon po ni Pangulong Duterte, may pinagyayabang siya dati na ayaw niya yung pinakamababang presyo, no? Hindi ko alam kung paano niya napatupad yun. Pero ngayon naman, hanggang sa araw na to, yung pinakamababang presyo pa rin, yung pong pinag-uusapan natin. Pero we would like to be able to see procurement reforms in the context of yung pong PPPs po natin. Ibig sabihin, we would like to see expedited processes. As an example, doon po sa, actually hindi binanggit ni Pangulong Marcos ito, yung po nga NAIA rehabilitation, hindi niya nabanggit ito. Pero I think in that context ng procurement, dapat makita ho natin yung expedited processes. Hopefully, dapat by as soon as the first quarter of 2024, no, meron na ho nga bagong concession. Ito pong NAIA, no? So, yan Kiko, yan ho yung dapat maging focus at hindi yung halimbawa gawing mas simple in terms of magkaroon ng lack of accountability and transparency sa amendments to the procurement law.
Yung nga sir, ang kailangan mo talaga pagbabalanse. On one hand, you want to make sure that everything goes smoothly, walang archaic provisions. I was talking kanina to Dean Edna Co ng UP NCPAG, sabi nga niya, sa procurement system kasi ang daming 19th century era laws na that slow things down. So that's one concern on one hand, but on the other hand nga, how do you make sure na in a country so rife with corruption na pati mga congressmen nakalublob sa kung saan-saan, how do you make sure na you don't naman further loosen the restrictions na talagang lalangoy sila sa korupsyon?
Hindi, alam po ninyo, ang talagang susi sa pagtitiyak ng procurement na tama, yung pagbabantay din ho talaga ng third party at ng civil society. Kasi, syempre, sa dami naman ng procurement, lahat naman kasi ho pinoprocure, papel, malalaking proyekto, flagship projects, no? Minsan na-overwhelm ho talaga yung civil society doon sa pagbabantay po ng lahat ng tipo kasi pati ba naman paperclip, no? Minsan, yan din ho, ginayari din ho minsan yan sa gobyerno. Nakita ho natin yan sa PSDBM, hindi ho ba? So, Tiko, very key po talaga na in the more important procurement, dapat nakabantay ho talaga yung tao. Kasi, syempre, in every step of the way, halimbawa, yung bureaucracy, alam ho nila yung magic ho dyan. So, halimbawa, ano ba yung mga magic sa procurement? Eh di syempre, yung pinagdi-disqualify ho ng mga ahensya, halimbawa, yung mga hindi ho nila kausap ng mga kontratista, hindi ho ba? So, sa totoo lang, wala naman tayo pakialam kung sino ho yung manalo sa mga procurement, whichever type of procurement it is, no? Pero ang importante ho talaga, we are able to get the best quality and we are also able to get the best price, no? But the only way for us to be able to do that is to be able to monitor procurement projects every step of the way. So, siyempre, hindi ho kaya ng nag-iisang grupo ito. So, I think naman there are very specific interest groups, no, na pwede ho talaga magbantay sa bawat aspeto ng mga procurement of whatever type.
But let me zoom into yung nabanggit mo na kanina, sabi ng Pangulong Duterte dati na bakit natin pinapayagan yun na we always get the lowest bidder. But isn't that a standard in most other democracies that unfortunately napupunta sa lowest bidder talaga yung proyekto o yung sale. And how do you guard against poor quality?
Well, syempre, makikita ho talaga yun ultimately dun sa terms of reference. No? So dapat, halimbawa, in a very specific procurement, talaga dapat ilista mo na halimbawa kung papel yan. Kung talagang gusto mo na high quality na papel, i-define mo talaga ron o dapat ganito kakapal yung papel. No? Para hindi newsprint, di ba? Halimbawa, yung ibabato nung kontratista. Kasi halimbawa, sasabihin, boss, sinabi mo, papel lang, di mo naman sinabi na ganito kakapalo. 100 GSM. So, minsan, doon ho talaga pumapasok yung hanky-panky, no? So, dalawang bagay, alam naman na ho natin yan dati, either utter incompetence or utter corruption, eh. Yung dahilan kung bakit ho nangyayari yung ilang mga bag. Sasabihin nila, boss, di naman namin alam. Sana ho talaga sinabi nyo sa amin na ganito kapal yung papel ho na gusto po ninyong i-procure. So, sa totoo lang, it also requires a very active leadership, active, action-driven, reform-driven leadership, no? Isa ho yan sa totoo lang, hindi natin nakita in the last year. Rightly or wrongly, in the previous regime, si Pangulong Duterte ho, kung ano ho yung maisipan niya at a particular moment, meron siyang gagawin, whatever the consequence, no? Yan ho yung more or less lacking under the leadership of the new president and the leadership of the cabinet secretaries. Wala ho tayo masyado nakikita na parang very practical-oriented na pagbabago in terms of policy, no? So, I guess, kahit ho sa usapin ho ng procurement and getting the best quality at the lowest price, dapat meron din pong real practical reforms na implement po ito pong bagong gobyernong ito.
Let me broaden the discussion a bit more. Yung sa SONA kahapon ng Pangulo, ang dami niyang binitawan, ang dami niyang mga numbers na sinight. Inflation has been tempered, growth is up, of course may base effect yun. Pero among other things, sabi niya, we've proven that we can bring down the price of rice and sugar and meat and all that. So parang, well, let me ask you directly, talaga bang bumaba na malaki ang presyo ng bigas?
Well, alam po ninyo, he will be held forever to his commitment to 20 pesos na bigas, no? Per kilo na bigas. So, yun ho yung laging itatanong ng ating mga kababayan. And, alam po ninyo, syempre, we've seen the social media rounds and obviously, we've seen the prices in different markets, no? Parang di naman ho talaga significantly bumagsak yung presyo. So,
ang well-built, sir, nasa 40 megit rin eh.
So, ibig sabihin, in fact, kahit ho yung mga typical na mga pamilya, no, alam nila na hindi ho talaga. For example, yung 10,000 halimbawa na grocery, 5,000 na grocery, nung nagdaang gobyerno, parang 7,500 na ngayon eh. Parang 15 na ngayon eh. Hindi ba? So, syempre, pagka ho, kinompare ho nila yung sinabi sa SONA, doon sa real na sitwasyon ng kanilang mga buhay, talagang parang sasabihin ho ng taong bayan, parang, alam niyo, boss, parang dito ganito eh. Parang hindi yun totoo eh. Hindi ba? So, yung tingin ko, yan ho yung talagang hindi nakita, no, ng taong bayan. Ano yung totoong impact sa buhay ko nitong nagdaang taon ng bagong paggogobyerno. No? So, siyempre, maganda naman ho. Kasi, pero ang totoo, in every government naman ho, talagang, siyempre, pagyayabang they will have figures, no? Pero, ang laging tanong, at forever hong tanong, talaga ba naranasan ng taong bayan yun? No? And in terms of sa binabanggit ho na pagbaba ng presyo ng pagkain, particular ng bigas, asukal, parang hindi. Kasi parang yan yung major controversies in the last couple of months. Eh. Hindi ho ba? Tapos yan pa ho yung gagamitin natin na halimbawa ng pagbabago at pag-unlad ng buhay ng atin pong mga pamilyang Pilipina.
Pero sir, do you think that the public do you think the public really directly holds the president accountable for these things? I know that yung 20 pesos galing sa kanya. Pero in the end, when you go to the CISBA, does the public really say to would the public really say to the president, asan yung 20 pesos ko? Or would they blame somebody else? I mean, like it or not, there are people who are so popular that para silang teflon. Walang kumakapit, walang dumidikit.
Well, alam po ninyo, sa totoo lang, particularly with agriculture and particularly with food prices and food security, there's no one else to blame actually. No? Kasi there is no cabinet secretary there. Di ba? It is the president himself that is serving as agriculture secretary. So it is difficult not to have a direct link to the problems that are being encountered in the agriculture sector. So actually, yan din naman yung panawagan ng mga experts ho in that sector. No? Baka dapat ho talagang magkaroon na ng real cabinet secretary outside of the president himself. Kasi para magkaroon ho ng tuto. Kasi we have seen it, no? Much of the controversies in the last year, wala naman ho sa ibang sektor eh. Kundi sa agricultural sector na wala hong cabinet secretary para yung pong Pangulo can basically focus on more strategic questions, more important questions such as syempre yung umpugan sa West Philippine Sea, no? Yung umpugan ho ng dalawang superpowers vis-a-vis the Philippines, no? So instead para magkaroon ho talaga ng focus dun sa pag-temper po talaga ng presyo ng agriculture at yung mga iba pa niyang mga commodities.
Attorney Terry, yung 12 panukala na gustong itulak ng Pangulo, I'm sure you've gone through that list, 12. Do you see anything there that you would have wanted taken out or given an additional push by the president yesterday? In other words, did the president miss out on anything?
Well, alam po ninyo, syempre, I'd like to focus on infrastructure dahil yan ho talaga yung ating tinututukan. Yung isa ho doon sa missing po talaga, hindi ko alam kung nabanggit ho ng previous guest po natin, alin po doon sa interplay ng infrastructure and MIF, no? Yung talagang paglalagakan ng pondo nito pong Maharlika Investment Fund. Kasi alam po ninyo, infrastructure projects, although pinagyabang ho na meron ho silang 123 projects na originated under this government, alam po ninyo, malaki po doon mga developmental projects which will not translate into actual yields, no, for the MIF, no? At ang problema ho ron, siyempre, yung pong meron actual yield, supposedly arena na ho yan ng private and foreign sector capital So, ang mangyari ho, the MIF, foreign capital and private sector capital will ultimately compete for example, the airport. Will it compete for the airport? Will it compete for the EDSA busway? Will it compete for yung pong power projects na kung saan talaga ho arena today ng private sector. So, tingin ko yan ho yung kailangan ng clarity from the president. Kasi ho, syempre, it will basically dampen the appetite of private sector and foreign capital in participating in all of these supposedly public-private infrastructure projects.
Parang as a public fund, are you there to make money or are you there to develop the country with development projects? Parang may I don't know, tama ba sir? There's a confusion as to what exactly you're there for. Magkaibang
objectives po talaga ito ultimately. Kasi for example, yung developmental infrastructure project, yung pagtatayo ng mga tulay at saka mga kalsada sa iba't ibang mga areas. Ang objective ho talaga ho nito, primary objective nito, hindi naman ho yield kundi to spur economic development in these areas So, hindi practical na MIF po yung paglalagakan po ng pondo nito, no? So, ibig sabihin, kailangan ho mag-clarify yung Pangulo. Ano ba talaga, kuya? Is it primarily a question of yield or is it primarily a question of contributing to national development or funding flagship infrastructure projects?
Okay. Well, maraming salamat, former Congressman Terry Ridon ng InfraWatch. Thank you for joining us this morning. And that's today's agenda. Please keep it here on Cignal TV's Channel 8 and 250 for the latest news. Sitting in for Cesar Beltran, my name is Ed Linggao. We are One News, all sides, all the time.